Ray Rice, the National Football League, touched off a national debate this past week over domestic violence assaults against women, but we also know something else. Why did it take a Ray Rice? Why did it take a dramatic videotape of someone beating his wife, fiance, and then, of course, later on wife? Why did it take that to put it on the table of the nation about domestic violence?
Pro football player Ray Rice has been fired and suspended indefinitely by the NFL, all after a graphic security video was released today.
Now, the wheel has turned. Now it can't be ignored. It's there for all to see. We're deeply concerned about that. We brought together women's groups today to talk about that and also share their experiences and tell what could be done to educate the public about domestic violence, both male and female.
Whenever in this country, 1 in 3 women in her lifetime is going to experience domestic violence. And every single day, 3 women die in the United States at the hand of an intimate partner or their husband. So that speaks to it being a huge, huge problem.
It's not only physical violence that's happening. That is what makes this such an epidemic, I think, is that, you know, there's a lot of things that may not outrage people the same way as this video did, but there's financial abuse happening, there's coercive control and power dynamics happening that you can't necessarily report to the police, but are traumatic and violent towards the victims.
Black women have been steadily increasing in terms of the reported against domestic violence, or intimate partner violence is what they call it now. And if we look at the reports over the last 14 years, and there's a great report on Black Women's Blueprint and on Black Women's Roundtable on the internet, you will show that though it decreased for other women, it increased for Black women. So Black women have the least protection of all women in this country, and it's a culture and a society that has totally devalue Black women.
We want to focus on the solution. We want to focus on turning these victims into survivors. And what that means is providing them with a safety net, providing them with the proper support that they are in need of. So that would include things from as far as like education to shelter. So a lot of our women we experience, they aren't necessarily self-aware that they're victims of domestic violence. So with the classes and the support that we provide for them, not only do we show them, yes, you are a victim, but also provide them with that solution. How do you go about dealing with an abusive relationship, whether or not you choose to stay in that relationship or whether or not you choose to leave that relationship? How do you deal with that?
The problem that I personally had with the letter was that it acknowledged that Roger Goodell had basically lied about knowing about the tape, and his basic incompetence was left alone. And it was only Ray Rice that they were interested in, and only in the employees of a system. And California now, we're in Sacramento. We see bills killed every year that stop courses for dating violence. Can't get it passed. We have a governor who eliminated the domestic violence mandates, so every locality has the discretion to enforce domestic violence laws. We're going backwards, not forwards, and no money, zero money is spent.
Also, something else we're concerned about too, the double standards oftentimes we see. We also know that we had a terrible situation where we had a California Highway Patrol officer beat an African-American woman senseless. Now, in light of what we have seen over the past week with Ray Rice, violence against women, domestic abuse, and much more, but especially violence against women, we can't think of anything that's more graphically that certainly put the finger on it, pointed to violence against women than what we saw back in July against Marlene Pinnock. We actually called, and we continue to call, and we're calling again today, for LA County District Attorney Jackie Lacey prosecute the officer that beat Marlene Pinnock. We've also seen an Oklahoma City cop raping and assaulting African-American women, but there was no national outcry about that. There was no furor about that. There was no demand about that to take action. So we have to be consistent when we look at domestic violence and assaults against women. Black women's lives should not be devalued and cheapened. Unfortunately, they are. Every life is important. And that means this. Domestic violence is something, assaults against women, no matter what ethnic group, has to be taken seriously. We say this, and this is a challenge to all. There's no excuse for abuse.